We were looking for an event that really appealed to the illustrators at SCBWI and to the authors. Both.
Okay.
We were
Yeah.
always looking for things because it's the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators.
That's right. Yeah.
So, and so often things are more focused towards the writers.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, the great thing about graphic novels is that they are a really tight combination of words and pictures, even more so than picture books. And it gives somebody the ability to either, totally create one on their own, or write one, or illustrate one with another writer. And I also think it's one of the few places where a publishing house will take a manuscript that's already got a writer and illustrator working together.
Okay.
Because,
okay.
With picture books and such, you get told again and again, don't send in a manuscript with an illustrator already working on it necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, is that still pretty much?
Yeah, no, it's still pretty much the rule.
And
yeah.
I think on graphic novels there's a bit more leeway on that. Because you're co-storytellers, I think, even more so than you are on a picture book.
And sometimes they assign a writer to write a graphic novel, like in Cynthia's case, and they pair her with an illustrator they think could handle a graphic novel.
Yeah, and they got Ming Doyle, who's for that.
Yeah,
Ming Doyle is really getting a lot of attention recently.
What's been going on with Ming?
She's doing something for one of the big, either Marvel or DC. I can't remember. I read it this morning.
Okay.
I keep seeing her name in the press, in the comics press. Her name just keeps coming up. I see it a lot, and she's just been announced as being on one of the big books. I wish I could remember.
Well, Cynthia is also no slouch when it comes to graphic novel scripts, right?
Right.
And she's going to be at the conference.
Well, she's going to be speaking.
She's one of the keynoters.
Because she's a great novelist. Just
YA novels,
great prose writer.
Yes.
But she's a huge fan of the comic book format.
That's right.
And so she had the background and understanding of how to write differently.
Yes.
Because you can't write the same way for a graphic novel that you do for a regular.
Is it like writing maybe like TV scripts or movie scripts? Or
it's
how is
much closer to writing scripts for television and movies than it is novelizing.
Dialogue driven and action driven.
Action driven. And there's a point where you can describe so much without stepping on the illustrator's toes. And I think in a lot of cases it's a matter of forming a partnership. Sometimes you don't meet your illustrator ever, don't even speak to them. We're on a graphic novel, I think. Depending on how you do it, it can either be just like that, or it can be a much more hand in glove experience where the illustrator will come and say, you've got these words here, and why do they need to be there when it's already being shown in the picture? That was the problem with a lot of 60s comic books. When Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were doing the Marvel things with the Avengers and Spider-Man, and they wrote in a very different way. Stan Lee would just come up with a concept, give it to the illustrator would go off and draw a story, and then give it back to Stan Lee, and Stan would then write the dialogue based on what he was seeing in the pictures. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting.
So the illustrator was kind of doing the storytelling.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, and especially Jack Kirby was a great writer on his own, and so a lot of the later stuff they did together was pretty much 90% Jack Kirby. But that's not to criticize Stan Lee, but you would get moments where you felt it looks like Stan felt the need to get his oar in a panel, because he would think Peter Parker's walking into a store thinking, I need to go to the store. And there's a picture showing him walking into the store, and in those days everything was much more text heavy in comics, and now that has gone away. The thought balloons on adult comics at least have really reduced. You don't get so much internal dialogue in the average comic. There are comics that use it to great effect.
But largely the comics are visually driven, and that's their narrative.
They have become much more movie driven, and you never, it's rare to hear someone's thoughts in the movie.
No Holden Caulfield stuff going on. Well, and so the illustrator is now slapping away the hand of the writer.
It can be, yeah, but I think that's the power of learning to write a graphic novel, is learning what words to use when, it teaches you to be very spare in your writing and really justify every word you use, and that's a skill that you can then take back and take to your novels. As someone who reads graphic novels, reads voraciously everything,
Mm-hmm.
there are books I'll read and think this person could really benefit from cutting about half these words.
It's always about cutting the words.
It's always about editing yourself down, and always about telling the story in the most effective way possible.
Well, now Cynthia Leitich Smith will be giving a little workshop in the one-day conference on just that topic. Is that right?
Exactly.
And she's a big proponent of becoming graphic novel literate and reducing the words. And she says it's a whole different animal. And she's taught this before. And she's made graphic novels. What's interesting about Cynthia is she's made graphic novels of her own existing novels, her own series. Tantalize series.
They're kind of
they're
side
offshoots.
stories.
Side stories. They're original. And, yeah.
They're both featuring the stories of another character from the novel, and
so it's the same.
It's the
world,
same happenings about them, but seen from their perspective.
Oh, I'm glad you made that distinction.
It's a brilliant way of doing it, and you don't get bored because there are things that you didn't know about happening to this character that are happening to that. What is it called? The one is Kieran's story, which is one of the male characters.
Kieran's story is the first graphic novel based on Tantalize, her original YA graphic novel.
And Tantalize has a female protagonist, but for the graphic novel, there's a male protagonist in the same world, and kind of a side story from that. So it's a really interesting way to do it. She didn't just graphic novelize an existing story, which it's not a bad thing, but it's really interesting. She decided to make it something new.
Something new, a new piece of fiction
tightly, yes.
With a new story. Now, like you, Cynthia has been a fan of comic books since she was a little kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she really gets the genre, and she's kind of a good person to talk on this topic.
She is. She's great.
And she's, of course, a really great writer, and she's fun to talk to about writing, but I think she has a special fascination for these visually driven, and wants to do more of them, doesn't she?
I think
she's done
I'm
two.
sure she.
And Ming has been her collaborator on both of the.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got. Can you talk a little bit about first, second
Calista
books?
Brill first, second books is an imprint of
Macmillan.
Macmillan, thank you. They're an imprint of Macmillan for Mark Siegel. Did a bunch of children's books on his own as well, which are kind of graphic novelish, even to start with. His Sea Dogs, for instance, was a semi-graphic novel, children's book. And they take a real European attitude towards the comics. They're really interested in the kind of skewed, the kind of sideways, the kind of really interesting story. They're not going to publish just a plain old superhero beat 'em up. That doesn't mean they wouldn't publish a superhero story, but you've got to have a real hook, something that really grabs the interest and seems new and fresh.
And their readers do they tend to skew toward college age, so they're not, or is it more of a sophisticated?
They skew all over the place. They've got different books that have skewed towards different readers. I'm trying to think. They even have published textbooks on comics, but Jessica Abel and Matt Madden's books. They were on the editorial committee, at least. Jessica and Matt. They were both teachers at School of Visual Arts in New York. They're now in Paris, but we were hoping we could get them to come to Austin. They love it here.
Well, we almost had Mark Siegel, didn't we? But he had another commitment or something.
Yeah, I think so.
Second, they publish graphic novels from authors from all around the world, don't they?
They do. There's a French author who does one about a little vampire, and that's very much aimed at the middle grade reader. But it's charming enough that anyone would love it.
Okay, and they do some from Iran and some Middle Eastern countries. And different. I
mean, they're all over the place.
Because graphic novels are kind of a universal medium now.
They are. More so most other places in the world than America. I think America's the last holdout on really recognizing them as an art form that can be used for storytelling. Americans I forget who made the comparison. They were saying that comic books in the comic book shops you go into are still very heavily super. That's gotten less over the last 5 years when I first heard the quote, and he was saying, imagine if people thought novels had to be about nurses, and you went to Borders, or now, at the time, that shows you when he said it.
Yeah.
And you would say, and you go to Borders, you're looking for something to read, and 90% of the shelf space is novels about nurses. And he says that's what the comic book shops are like in America, and this is not true anywhere else. And what people are now learning is autobiography, biography, history, romance, fantasy, superhero, just plain silliness. Stuff like First Second is publishing Dave Roman, who's coming to our... He's the illustrator writer.
Yeah, illustrator writer.
He's a very cartoony guy. They're publishing his Astronaut Academy. He published it himself originally on the web and in little hand-stapled pamphlets that are so cute. Called it Astronaut Elementary, and I guess they felt maybe the word academy made it more approachable by older kids that would see elementary and think, oh, that's for babies. Because it most certainly isn't. It's clever as all get out. It's funny. It parodies all the Japanese stuff the kids love so much. There's parodies of the Pokemon stuff going on
that the kids know about, and they'll get the joke or whatever. Yeah.
They do, and it's just fun. It's just all these different, and it's told in snippets. It's told in 2 to 3 page snippets featuring different characters, and it comes together to make one big story.
That could encourage a little kid to read.
Yeah, so it's very
comes together.
It's readable. You never get bored. You'll come back to the same characters again and again, but you get to see things from all kinds of perspectives, and it's a very complex way of telling stories, and at the same time you read through it and you don't realize how complex it was because everything just ties together beautifully. I mean, what if your school was a space station and you had subjects like Spanish, math, tumbling in space, fireball throwing,
and you're very survival on the station depended on you learning these subjects.
Yeah, that's very true, and that's it's just really charming stuff, and I fell in love with his stuff. His wife is Raina Tegelmeier, who wrote Smile, which I believe is also First Second, which is a story, which is an autobiography about her young teen years. She had an accident that damaged her mouth, and about all the reconstructive surgery and braces and everything, and being a young teenage girl dealing with the fact that she had major dental work going on the whole time, and what that does to your self-esteem. And
yeah, a lot of these graphic novels are very personal stories, aren't they?
They are.
It's stunning and almost scary in a way how close to the bone a lot of them are. Not to mention the adult subjects that a lot of them.
It's a marvelous way to tell a difficult story.
Well, why do you tell me more about it?
I mean, Art Spiegelman won the Pulitzer for Mouse. The subtitle was My Father Bleeds History. His father's an Auschwitz survivor.
Right.
And his mother also, and his mother committed suicide when he was a teenager. She never really, and he told this story in comics format, and some people, at the time, this was the late 80s, I think, that they were published as a book. He'd been doing bits and pieces for a decade or so before that, trying to exorcise these demons from his family, recording it. There was a lot of criticism saying, oh, comics are too lightweight for this material, and oh, you're drawing the Jews as mice and the Nazis as cats, and isn't that a bit of an obvious metaphor? But you read it and it's just brilliant, and it won the Pulitzer for a reason. It changed the way Americans looked at comics in a lot of ways. It became, you could read this on the bus or on a plane around other adults, and they wouldn't look at you and think that you had telling, which is just very complex. And sweated blood over every panel in that. You can actually buy a book called Meta Mouse, which is interviews about it and articles about it, and it also has a CD or a DVD now. I feel so old. That has the entire graphic novel on it in digital format, and you can click and strip away the layers from finished to rough.
Oh, that's a comic book creator's comic book.
It is.
Okay.
And so you can see his different thinking process, and you can click little audio markers and listen to his interviews that he recorded with his father, so that you can hear the discussions about what he's talking about.
Because he did interview his father.
So, I mean, yeah.
And that's part of the storyline, too.
So he's brought that into the digital world. He's brought that into the
multimedia,
new multimedia tablet thing like that. Tablets are very visual. Again,
it's all about
storytelling with pictures and words together.
Well, now he and his wife have also created that line, and I forget who the big publisher is. Comics for early beginning readers.
Little Lit, yeah.
Yeah, Little Lit. It's I can't remember the name of the line though.
I can't either.
But his wife is the art director
New Yorker
for the New Yorker magazine, and those are charming and very interesting to look at. I've seen a few review copies. So it goes down to the little early reader Dick and Jane stories too, the same comic format, which involves different kind of pacing and.
Yeah, they did Little Lit, which start with stories for.
Was that one
small,
of their titles?
Yeah. They've done different ones. They did scary stories for scary children or something like that, or creepy stories for creepy children. I can't remember the title. But, I mean, they're very accessible to children of all ages, and it's both original stuff and a few things from the 30s, 40s, 50s, where there were some brilliant comic book artists working who were so much better than they got any respect for.
So, so that's it. That's the...
This is one of them.
One of the early ones that Francois Moulet and Art Spiegelman did together with
they published
Raw.
They published one that was kind of a compilation of things from the different. These are the giant hardbacks, but they actually published a paperback that had stories collected from the different ones.
And isn't that a gorgeous cover? And
it's a beautiful
sophisticated.
cover.
It's like mind blowing. Really.
And that's Spiegelman. Yeah, it's a Spiegelman cover. He's very restless as an artist. He explores different styles. You can usually recognize him anyway, but he's done so many New Yorker covers. Of course, he's got an in with the editor.
Yeah.
But ones that have gotten a lot of national attention. But you get stories by people like Lemony Snicket, who did, of course, the series of Unfortunate Events. Illustrated by Richard Sala, who's also a great comic storyteller on his own. Very charming. And I was very influenced by one of the books he wrote. And then there's J. Otis Siebold, who...
children's author, illustrator.
A lot of children's books. There's this penguin is very recognizable. It's the same one he used in all of the Other Reindeer. I don't know if it's the same character, but...
All of the Other Reindeer is such a great book.
And, Neil Gaiman, who's famous for Coraline and all that, started in comics. And got his attention.
He did that. What was his series? Was the something? Famous.
He did Sandman.
Sandman series.
Which one of the issues of that won the World Fantasy Award and upset the entire world of literature, because how dare a comic book come and take an award from an actual artist?
Like the Pulitzer from a journalist.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. How funny.
Yeah, but and it's Basil Wolverton here, and he was working in the 50s. So they just picked up one of his old stories. It fits right in with these modern literary takes. People from all over the world writing this. I'm seeing Japanese artists. Patrick McDonnell, who does the comic strip Mutts. There's one in here. And so there's a bunch of absolutely brilliant work being done for kids in comics. And these are, just lovely artistic works, and by respected, well-known children's book names, along with names that maybe you wouldn't know so well, who are well-known in the comics world.
I'm thinking of Mark Siegel's Mermaid on the Hudson book that began as a website, a webcomic. Right. And you have done, and we're going to talk about your webcomics in a minute, but it deals with adult themes. That it's not a children's book, but it's an amazing trip. It's an amazing thing to read, and he built his following with his website, and then he brought it out last year as a hardback.
He had a regular tradition to put out hardcovers
yes.
to show that this is not just disposable literature. This is serious. I mean, did First Second publish American Born Chinese? I think they did.
They might have.
Derek Kirk Kim, and he won a major young adult fiction award for that. Not one for graphic novels, but was up for several, like the National Book Award, something.
So yeah,
But he was up for so many awards and won a few of them for American Born Chinese, which is a combination of fiction and autobiography about growing up Chinese in 70s, 80s America, and the casual racism that he dealt with, and his own image of himself, where he tries to draw himself becoming more and more American as he dreams of being.
Wow. But
then he introduces a character who's so offensively racistly Chinese, who just hangs on his shoulder at all times, as a funny and insightful way of saying, I can pretend all I want that I'm going to be blue-eyed and blonde hair, but this idea is always hanging over my shoulder. And you couldn't do that easily in a book that wasn't a comic, that wasn't a graphic novel.
A funny spin on it that keeps it entertaining.
It does.
Why is the graphic novel better for that kind of deeply personal?
Well, the idea of this other character coming in and representing
It's
what
a visual
he's trying
element.
to get away from,
Okay.
and representing himself, and seeing him draw himself becoming more American. He wants to call himself Danny and be an American boy.
Maybe. Yeah.
And just the way he draws himself on purpose as trying to Americanize. But there's this character who comes in with the queue and the pointy broad hat and is always walking like this, just because that's, he said, no matter what I do, this is always what I'm being seen as.
That's really personal. That's deeply autobiographical again.
It is.
For that topic.
And it's not something that would be so easy to sell simply in words.
Yeah.
You would have to explain it more.
To tell or to sell, either one,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not just First Second that's turning out these books. Candlewick is doing them for Cynthia and maybe other authors. I'm not sure.
I think so, yeah.
And other publishers are looking.
Scholastic is doing it.
Scholastic has been doing
They're
it.
republishing Jeff Smith's Bone, which is an amazing piece of work. He self-published 70 issues of the comic.
Oh, wow.
And then Scholastic has picked them up and he did them in black and white. He has beautiful inker. It is just beautiful black, pure, hard, no shading black and white. And they hired someone to come in and paint it, and I was thinking that's a terrible idea, but they are beautiful.
Robert Crumb illustrated Genesis or some
He did.
book of
I
the
have
Bible.
that. He edited nothing. He just
illustrated the Bible.
He illustrated the book
in
of
his
Genesis.
style. Yeah, it's just kind of exciting. Well, now, what will Dave Roman? What do you think he'll be talking about in the workshop?
I'm sure he'll be talking about breaking in, how he broke in, about his process, about just about the flexibility of the format. He's written X-Men comics actually as well.
Okay, cool.
But not mainstream ones. He did a kind of romance comic version called X-Men Misfits, and it has a very Japanese look. And he did it with his wife and another artist.
Again, on that
and I saw them. I met him at Small Press Expo, and I saw those books, and I said, "Are those just independently published, kind of, fan fiction style things?" Oh no, I said Marvel came to us.
The idea of the misfit seems to be this running theme for these YA graphic novels.
That's kind of the joy of the superhero, and I think that's why it's such a long-running popular thing, is that here's someone who's a bit of a misfit, and don't we all feel that way? So, there's a reason for the popularity, and I think comics tend to draw the misfits because the people that are writing and drawing them were often the people that were misfits themselves, and maybe still are.
And then they become these blockbuster summer movies and franchises that are like industries unto themselves.
Yeah, I think comics have always been a bit of an outsider art form. They were very heavily dominated by Jewish creators in the 50s. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, both Jewish. Basically, they were kind of ghettoized from other kinds of work. There's no conspiracy or anything of Jewish people taking over comics. It's just it was one of the industries where they could easily get work when they weren't getting advertising work and such.
I believe the early classics illustrated comics was an idea of a Jewish publisher in New York who probably felt an outsider himself and thought it was a good idea to bring classical literature into kid format at the same time that Superman comics were out there.
Yeah, keep forgetting there used to be those classics
No,
illustrators.
I grew up on those. That's where I got my classics education.
Yeah,
reading those
that's
things.
how I read the Three Musketeers.
And me too, and many others, and all the Dickens novels. Yeah, we're all three.
And those can be done so well. I mean, it
They were
draws you in. If you're a reluctant
Draws you in.
reader, it'll bring you
You're a
in.
boy.
I can only think of a few comic books that, or graphic novels, I should say, that a reluctant reader would be running for the hills from, and none for children that I can think of.
It's so fun that Cynthia grew up like a boy reading comic books, and
Yeah,
she's
well,
not
that's
the
what
only-
that's the thing, is that's changed so much. Is what you're saying. When she was reading them, it was not a girl thing to do.
And now girls are writing and creating comics all over the place.
They are. I mean, you go to Barnes and Noble, all the graphic novels, especially the Japanese ones, have a section to themselves, and there's always, if school's out, there are teenage girls sitting in the aisle, hunched over these things, just gathered around there, and that's not something you were seeing in bookstores, and you don't even see boys doing it with comics these days, younger boys, but they are drawn to things like the Captain Underpants, which is a kind of hybrid of
Yes.
comic and children's book.
Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
Diary of a Wimpy Kid is very much a combination where there are comics mixed in with the text, but at all times the pictures are important, and the pictures are telling part of the story.
That's a great point.
And again, this goes to children's books as well. One of our favorites here is the Mrs. LaRue books by, I can't think of his name, Mark. He also, anyway.
Okay.
He does these wonderful books where the dog writes letters home about his adventures. And in color...
Is it one of Kyle's favorite books?
Yeah, Riley loves them.
I mean, Riley.
Poor Riley, she's out cold. But, he'll do spreads which are in black and white and color. And the black and white is the tale of woe that Ike LaRue is telling, and the color is the actual, what's actually happening to him. And you can't do that just by writing. It needs the pictures. So there's one where he claims he's been picked up by the police and he's locked up in a cell and being fed gruel, and there's an image of this in black and white of him in the striped prison outfit, and he's got his little spoon and his horrible thing of food, and then the color is him kind of leaned back at the desk eating a donut and playing cards with the police. And they're just treating him like a king. It's like, we like this doggy. So it's not quite a graphic novel, it's more of a picture book, but again, it's a kind of picture book that wasn't being done before comics started getting popular. There's a real elegance to the language of the pictures mixing with the words, and people were doing that, but letting the pictures carry that much of the story was much less common. I think Morris Sendak got so much trouble getting Where the Wild Things Are done just because there are so few words.
Yeah.
And also it seemed like an odd subject matter, but so
it's a comic book, isn't it?
It's in a way, it's a comic book. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And picture books are closer to a comic book than most other literary forms.
Mm-hmm. And he grew up a huge comic book fan and a huge animation fan. Mickey Mouse was always a deep love of his, and actually, In the Night Kitchen is a comic book.
Yes.
It is a graphic novel.
Yeah, with paying lots of homage to memes and icons of our culture.
Right, and again, how could you have characters that were homages to Oliver Hardy as the big chef, the big fat chef?
Yeah.
In a book where you had to say, you would have to write the line, he looked like Oliver Hardy.
Yeah. What a snoozer. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you got the visual meme that everybody will respond to.
Right.
Well, so what do you think Calista Brill will be focusing on at the workshop?
I'm hoping that she will focus mostly on how people can approach a publisher.
Okay.
And what publishers are looking for.
Uh-huh.
Of course, I think that's always something people want to know, is what are publishers looking for.
Yeah.
I mean, she can't speak for other houses, but giving an idea of what First Second is looking for I would hope give people the impetus to look at what other houses that publish graphic novels are looking for, and they are out there.
We'll assume that she'll address that from for writers as well as maybe illustrators with portfolios. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, they work with writers and illustrators who are separate people. They don't just go with people that sit like I do and write and draw at the same.
Although they're looking for that as well.
They are.
And there are plenty of serious people
Dave
aspiring
Roman does
to do.
his on her own. His wife, Raina Tegelmeier, does hers on her own. I think most of the really famous ones tend to be a single writer, except we mentioned Neil Gaiman, who is only a writer.
Yeah.
The man cannot draw his way out of a paper bag, and he'll admit it, but he writes beautifully for the medium.
And thinks visually.
He does think very visually. I got this from Dave at the Small Press Expo a few years back, and that's Astronaut Elementary, and he was just publishing himself. He just went to the copy shop and got the cover done on a colored paper. I have 4 or 5 of these, and they're all different colors. And then he's got his inside, and then he's got his really just charmingly simple
Look at those
drawings.
Yeah.
And so these are, these come together to tell the story. And let's see. This is a tale of bird people attacking the bunny plant. This is a kid's book, obviously. But I mean, he knows it's silly. It's meant to be silly.
And the kids are following right along with it.
They are. And so, he just did just beautiful stuff here. I mean, it's a very simple drawing style. And, giant robots come in.
Yeah.
Everything like that. He even finished the story on an orange page.
On the end paper, so
on the end paper, yeah.
How funny is that?
But these are just, he called them mini mangas, and this is number 2, I guess. And then he put it out with First Second.
And there's the upgrade.
And there's the upgrade.
Is that an anthology of several of the editions, or?
It's the story he was telling in his webcomic, and then he expanded it beyond.
He's got value patterns in these ones.
But you'll notice that the drawing style is just slightly more.
Yeah. He's got grayscale in there a little bit.
And it's cleaner.
It is cleaner, yeah.
It's cleaner. It's slightly more professional looking. But I was not sold that it looked better at first.
Yes, I know what you mean.
Because I was such a fan of the originals.
But this is still kid-friendly.
But it's very kid-friendly.
A lot of words, the kids have got to do some reading to get through these.
They do a bit, but, they're not big words. They're not hard, and they're just so funny stuff going on that, someone who didn't really want to read might just enjoy looking at the pictures.
Yeah, it's true.
So, yeah, he's done...
and they look a bit like toys, too, somehow.
They do. I mean, they're very...
Well, so he's going to be at the conference.
He's going to be at the conference talking about his work. Cynthia's going to be there, and Calista Brill from First Second, who published this. I don't think you can probably... There it is. You make out the...
Yep.
That's their logo, the digital 01.
01.
That's the first second. There's a little word second right there. You can't see.
Yep, I see it. It's an American. It's one of the few American serious publishers of graphic novels.
That's right.
That's what they specialize in.
Wholly and totally devoted to the medium.
And the publisher is Mark Siegel, who is a graphic novelist
himself. Yes.
He's a brilliant artist.
He is. He's also got a similarly charmingly cartoony style.
Yes.
And it's
amazing what a style he's got.
I mean, this style is very popular right now. You've got things like Adventure Time on TV and other shows like that people are really, it's a very kid-friendly style.
South Park as well.
That's very. So the thing is, South Park is incredibly kid-friendly looking.
Yeah.
It's not appropriate for them.
Yes.
But it's the what's the word I'm looking for? It's the dangerous. It's the attractive hazard. What do they call it?
Attractive nuisance.
Attractive nuisance. Yeah. Yes. South Park.
That's a liability.
South Park, Family Guy. All those are attractive nuisances as far as kids are concerned.
Erik is very modest, and so he's not broaching the subject of his own work, which is wonderful, and I'm a big fan. And so, Erik, tell us about some of your own webcomics, graphic. You've been creating those little things like Dave Roman. I've seen you cart your own of those off to small press publishing conferences and webcomic conventions, and you've done a lot more since then. So tell us about what you do and what you've been doing, and what you have done with all of this kind of, and there's a little one right there. This is
this is a piece I did to promote the event.
Oh, have you got a release out for?
Well, it's just on the website. This is actually drawn in Manga Studio because it has such nice inking tools, but and it has it actually does the dots and everything like that to give the Japanese look.
Who is that? Modern art, Liechtenstein?
Liechtenstein a bit.
Liechtenstein, yeah.
But I added a text balloon to it and put it on the website to.
Okay, so that's what you'll see if you go to the awesome SCBWI website.
To promote the event, yeah.
Yeah, and you just click right there where it says "Read More," and it will take you right to the registration page.
Actually, and this is the YA.
That's the info.
If you go, there are questions and answers on the site.
Yeah.
Graphic novels, what are they? Why should I care? I wrote this alongside of several other people. Sam, who's our RA now, our regional advisor.
Yes,
and Amy Ferrier, who's our illustrating chair. Samantha
Amy.
Clark.
We all gave their answer. Y'all gave your answers to that.
There's
Cynthia's.
There's Cynthia's book with Ming Doyle.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put these.
No, I'm not. I'm getting a far away view of it, but now. So Erik, you have and there's interviews with the three of them, Calista, Cynthia, and
there are
and Dave on the page as well. And
then
there's the registration.
Definitely did. I'll have to see if I can find it. They're around here somewhere.
They're somewhere. I've linked to them, and we'll put the links up under the video description.
There have been so many. We just put up a news story today about graphic novels for all ages, as in kindergartners can appreciate these. Younger than kindergarten.
Oh, neat. Published by Macmillan again. Huh? Mm-hmm. And there's Toon Books. That's Francois Molly's and.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know who the big dog is. Maybe they're independent. I don't know, but.
Yeah, Toon Books is obviously breaking through new. A Trip to the Bottom of the World with Mouse, and it's got an incredibly charming graphical feel to it, very open and appealing to children.
All their books, Toon Books, have an appeal, a visual appeal. Any illustrator could learn a lot just by looking at them.
And there's other books to look at for that age group, and there's one called Little Mouse Gets Ready that I didn't know about. It's by Jeff Smith, who did Bone. We were talking about. And Bone is most definitely teenage up. It's not.
Yeah.
It's just subject matter. It gets a bit dark. There's nothing inappropriate as far as I would say, but it is just too heavy for a small child to really. Yeah, I was talking with somebody when she was writing this article. Marcia Reedy wrote this article, one of us, and she was saying, well, what else would you put in? And I said, well, I actually think Richard Scarry is a good example of someone who uses comic book
style
technique.
Yeah.
He doesn't break it into panels, but there are some pages where the story takes place over the page, where the character appears multiple times. Mm-hmm. The idea of using picture to represent time by drawing your eye to follow the path through the page, and you don't worry that Huckle the cat is here, but he's also here, and he's also here on the same double page spread, and that's very much a graphic novel technique.
It's the literacy of the graphic novel. It's starting to sound like Scott McCloud now a little bit.
I am.
Well,
I took a class from Scott McCloud, and I think it rubbed off very heavily on me.
Yeah, he certainly makes you think about.
The man is a philosopher of comics.
He is.
And his book, Understanding Comics, is definitely required reading if you're wanting to create.
Oh, it's a fascinating book.
He's got 3. The second one is called Reinventing Comics, and even he admits that it was a premature attempt to talk about digital work.
But some of his thoughts were prescient in what the web would ultimately become.
Some were quite prescient, and some were just so far off base. But as a thought experiment, it's brilliant. But and then he wrote a third one called Creating Comics, which is a guide to making comics and what you should know. So it's a good book. And First Second publishes one called Writing Pictures, Drawing Words.
A how-to?
Oh yeah. It's a college-style textbook broken down into chapters, each with exercises for the students to do. It's meant to be done in a class setting.
How to create books for them, First Second, for example.
And they have extra sections in each chapter for what they call the Ronin, which were the masterless samurai, the people that wandered their own way.
Yes.
Separated. So Ronin are the people that are doing the book by themselves.
Okay,
So there's
like
so
Dave
much
was
good-
doing with his,
Mhm.
and you.
Or no, but not taking it as part of a class. Doing the exercises.
Oh, outside the classroom. And
Because
doing
they highly
on your own
recommend
plan.
you get a group of like-minded people,
A
each
tribe.
doing the chapter and then getting together and critiquing one another and learning from what each other had done, because their exercises are brilliant. Take take the story of Jack and Jill and retell it in a different.
Oh, like we did at an Inklings meeting one time.
I did Jack and Jill as a 1930s Raymond Chandler thing with a hard drinking. Well, he was drinking root beer, but hard drinking Jack and Jill having to go up the hill to get the pail of water, but it done in the Raymond Chandler style with or the Dashiell Hammett, and it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot from it.
All right.
And then
What is this here?
this is just a game. I mean, when you're learning to write and do comics, there are a lot of little fun games to do, and this is one. This is actually made from a single piece of paper.
Okay, this is one
Just
sheet of
folded
8.5 by 11.
One
copy
sheet of
paper.
8.5 by 11 folded down.
Now that's your
into a
character
booklet.
from your monkey.
This is my monkey.
Eric and Monkey.
Eric
series.
and Monkey Talk About Life.
Talk About Life. Your webcomic series that's still going.
Occasionally. I've
Well,
been so
yeah.
busy with education, I haven't had time, but I want to get back.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, you just fold it into this booklet, and then you draw the cover on one, you open it,
Draw on there.
and you draw the next, whatever you want. It doesn't have to be panels. I did. I
Okay.
treated each one as a page.
So yeah.
So yeah, this is 2 panels on the folded page, and then if you fold it right, it's pretty obvious that there's no other way to go. So it unfolds,
up.
and again, this is 4 panels, and I treated it as such. You don't have to.
Yeah.
Telling the story, and then that unfolds to that,
Hey.
and the story grows. And I did this. Yeah. This is just pen and ink.
Pen and ink. And then you can run off as many copies of
You
this
can.
piece
I
as you
scanned
want.
it, and I did a little tiny cleanup.
Yeah.
And then the final thing is unfolding to, and that's the entire back page
That's some great line work, Eric.
where I just played with it, and I started ignoring the folds as panels and just
Put in your own panels.
put in my own panels.
Those are fine. Look.
So, I mean, and this is just this fun game, and there's also something called the 24-hour comics day, where you try and create your own 24 pages of comics in 24 hours.
Yes.
I've never made it.
You participated in those.
I got 18 pages in. On one, and that's one of the possible rules is work until you work. If you work the whole 24 hours and don't finish, then you've achieved this achievement, which is you did the 24 hours.
You
and
stayed up
other
all
people
night.
say, there's another rule where you take it home and you finish it when you can.
My rule is a good night's sleep
Uh-huh.
for creative work.
I'm too old for it now.
Yeah.
I realized that last time. I am too old for it. And I
you were
put together something called Geriatric Comic Book Day with 8 pages in 8 hours.
In 8
or
hours.
6 pages in 6 hours. Something where, people that need their good night's sleep can still get together, because comics is a great way to feed off each other's creativity. It's a great, writing can be such a hermit-like solitary experience that when you're working in comics, sometimes it really helps to be in a group of people, just, and it's a game. It might lead to something. Some of the 24-hour comics people have gotten great ideas from and done things with, but it's just a game. It uses muscles that you might not use
Anytime
otherwise.
you give yourself a deadline and a constraint, that's when creativity
Mhm.
can happen. So
Exactly.
Well, I know you have participated in many of those, and you've been a real warrior and all that.
And Scott McCloud started that as well.
That was his
That was
baby?
his idea. But he and the guy that, I believe it was one of the creators of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they argued over who was slower at drawing, and so they
fun.
decided to do this as a challenge.
It's still going, and it's still
But
going
it's
on.
still going, yeah.
In Austin, Texas, too, isn't it?
They do it in Austin. They do it all over the world.
All over the world. Eric, now where we can find your web comics on your website, and where else? Tell me about your online presence with web comics, and let's talk for just a second about the role of web comics.
Without the monkey. Yeah, this is Hex Libris was a longer form story. And it's about the power of literature, and here I'm just making fun of this was at the time that Pride and Prejudice and zombies was big, and I was just making fun of, and so many people were copying that, so this is me making fun of
the copies.
I've got like Tarzan, Lord of the Vampire Apes, and Ebenezer Scrooge, Ghostbuster, and I still think that might have sold.
I think you might be right. Hex Libris is one of the most child-friendly, charming.
I try to make it what they call all ages.
Really all ages, because it was charming and beguiling for an adult, for a friendly, and I would have enjoyed reading it in the 3rd grade.
And I think I do want to come back to it. I want to reapproach it.
The characters were all felt so fresh and original, and it's just, I'm glad you're going to come back to it.
I've got characters from history and
literature,
all wandering in.
And popular literature, and Nancy Drew
style character. I'm looking for her right now. I mean, I need to drop down to like chapter 6.
It's about a young man who has the job of being this steward, guardian of a magical library.
Yes.
Where the characters come to life, and he finds himself getting all involved in all of their dramas, and it's very accessible and funny and sweet, and it's romantic too. It's got a real you're good at romance.
Well, thank you. I don't know if my wife would agree or not.
It's a sweet romance. Well, in terms of your characters, your storylines,
but these are, here's one of the few with all 3 of my main characters appearing in it, which is Kirby, who's the poor schmuck who's been put in charge of the library.
Yeah.
Where characters wander out of the books, and Frankenstein's creature.
Yeah.
And then there's Connie Carter, girl detective from the 50s, who's wandered in, and
that name, Connie Carter.
I love that. But this is when they first are all in the same room, and he's, I love my Frankenstein's creature because he's just gotten sick of being all dark and everything. He's actually
he's a softie,
quite a big softie. But I actually took a line straight from Mary Shelley here with "How dare you strike me? I will glut the maw of death." And he's like, "Nah." You kids are great. I'll just group hug.
Because you are very learned in the Mary Shelley and all that Victorian horror literature.
I love that stuff.
You are a fan.
This is all done in Manga Studio.
Okay, Manga Studio, which you said the other day on Facebook, is the software illustrators should really seriously consider using. And so tell me about that.
Well, if you're doing graphic novels, it's great because let me just see if I can find one here. Most of these are single one-offs, but when you are creating, you can go and create a new story or a new page. And if you want to create a story, this allows you to say, I'm going to create a book, and this will create a single file that has all your individual pages in it, and instead of you having to, if you're working in a different way, having them all scattered to the wind and having to put them together, you can actually use this program to put together a story, and they'll share the same template, and you can print them off as a book, and it'll help you put it together digitally for printing.
It gives you
as a single book.
Panels and drawing tools?
And you can also, or you could just create a single page, which I'll do now.
Okay.
And I've actually even created my own templates. Like there's my template for Hex Libris right there, that I just, whenever I created a new one, I was actually creating them as a story, so each chapter was a separate file, and they all come together.
Were you teaching Manga Studios to kids as in Laguna Gloria?
I did some, yeah. There was more interest in creating
the animation,
which I use Anime Studio, which is a sister program,
I see.
And is a very powerful animator. But this has just created a page. Let me shut some of this other stuff down in the back.